This snail is doing the one thing a snail should never do. It is climbing up into the open, into the brightest, most exposed place it can find, in the full glare of the daylight where every hungry eye in the sky can see it. And it cannot stop, because where its eyes should be, two swollen sacs are throbbing, fat, green, candy-striped, pulsing like a heartbeat you can see. So it drags itself higher, toward the light, wearing two beating lures where its eyes used to be. It is crawling toward its own death, and something inside it wants it there. Host, or hijacker. No one is safe. Its name is Leucochloridium, the green-banded broodsac, and it is not an insect, not a fungus, not anything you would ever see coming. It is a flatworm, a parasitic fluke, a soft, mindless thread of tissue, and it has one of the most disturbing life stories of any animal on Earth. It begins its life as an egg, dropped in the droppings of a bird, and then it waits for a very specific victim, an amber snail, one of the small, translucent Succinia snails that graze on wet leaves in forests and marshes across the northern hemisphere. The snail eats the droppings and swallows the eggs along with them. That is all it takes. Inside the snail, the parasite hatches, and it begins to grow into something that will hollow out the snail's own eyes and turn them against it. But the snail is not the parasite's real goal. The snail is only a vehicle, the place this fluke truly needs to end up, the place where it becomes an adult and lays the next generation of eggs, is inside a songbird. And to get there, it has to solve an impossible problem. A snail hides in the shadows. A bird hunts in the light. Somehow this brainless worm has to bring the two together. And here is the question that should stop you cold. This is a flatworm. It has no eyes of its own, no brain, no plan, no hands, no way to see the sun it is chasing. It is a soft parasite buried inside another animal's body. So how does something with no mind at all take a shy, light-avoiding snail, an animal whose entire survival depends on staying hidden and damp and out of sight, and walk it out into the open, into the sunlight, into the exact place where a predator is most likely to find it? How does a rootless, brainless worm override the deepest instinct a snail has? You have probably heard the answer before. You have heard this called mind control, the parasite seizing the snail's brain and steering it like a puppet. It is one of the most famous stories in all of nature, and most of what you have heard about it is wrong. To understand what is really happening, you have to follow the parasite up into the one place it chooses to go. Once inside the snail, the fluke grows into a branching tube-like body, and it sends extensions of itself creeping upward through the snail, until they reach the eyestalks. A snail's eyes sit at the tips of two soft tentacles on its head, and this is where the parasite does its most infamous work. It pushes its brood sacs, swollen packets of its own developing larvae, directly up into those tentacles. Each brood sac is crammed with larvae, somewhere between 100 and 250 of them packed into a single sac, waiting, and then that sac begins to move. It pulses, swelling and contracting, over and over, 40 to 75 times a minute depending on the warmth of the day. It flushes with color, green bands, dark speckles, a darker tip, and in the light, it beats faster and brighter. In darkness, it stops. The result is grotesque. The snail's slender, transparent eye stalk becomes a bloated, throbbing, striped tube, swollen so enormously that the snail can no longer retract it, no longer pull its own eye back into the safety of its head. Whatever this thing is now, it is not an eye anymore. It is a display. But the swollen, beating eye is not what earns this story its name. Plenty of parasites deform the bodies they live in. What makes this one unforgettable is not what it does to the snail's body. It is what it makes the snail do. How it takes a creature built to hide and marches it into the light. And the way it pulls that off is far stranger and far quieter than the legend you have been told. You have heard this called mind control. The truth is stranger, Because the parasite never touches the snail's brain. There is no puppet string, no hijacked nervous system. The fluke does not burrow into the snail's mind and take the wheel. It sits in the eyestalks and nowhere else that matters. And from there, researchers believe, it does something almost mechanical. Think about what it has done to those tentacles. It has stuffed them so full of pulsing larvae that they cannot be pulled back in. And a snail's eyes are how it reads the light. When those swollen sacs jam the eye stalks and flood them, the leading explanation is that the snail's sensitivity to light simply breaks down. Its built-in instinct to flee the bright, exposed places stops working the way it should. A healthy snail feels the sun and retreats into shadow. This one no longer gets the message, so it drifts upward, toward the light, into the open, not because a tiny puppeteer is steering its brain, but because the part of it that was supposed to say hide has been quietly switched off. And for almost 90 years, nobody actually proved this happened at all. The original claim came from a single paper back in 1922, a story so vivid, it became a textbook example for generations, repeated everywhere, with no hard data behind it. It was not until 2014 that scientists finally went into the field and measured it. What they found was chilling in its precision. 53% of the infected snails ended up fully out in the open, exposed for the entire observation, compared with just 28% of the healthy ones, twice as likely to be sitting where death could find them. The old legend was finally true. It just was not what anyone thought. Now here is why the eyes. Why the parasite chose that one specific place on the snail's whole body to build its horror. Look again at what it has made. Two fat, green, banded sacs, pulsing rhythmically at the top of a slender stalk, out in the daylight where they can be seen. To you, they are grotesque. But to a songbird flitting through the branches, researchers think they look like something else entirely. They look like a caterpillar, plump, striped, twitching in the sun, exactly the kind of soft, wriggling meal a small bird spends all day hunting. This is called aggressive mimicry, a lure disguised as prey, and the parasite has turned the snail's own eyes into it. The throbbing, the color, the way it beats faster in the light, the presumed purpose of all of it is to catch a bird's attention and say, "Here, an easy caterpillar, come and take it." And here is where we have to be honest with you, because this is the part the internet always skips. No one has ever actually watched it happen in the wild, not once. There is not a single documented case of a songbird swooping down and plucking a broodsac from a living snail out in nature. So when we say the eyes are bait to fool a bird, that is the assumed function. The piece the whole story hangs on, inferred from everything the parasite so obviously builds toward. It is almost certainly true. It has simply never been caught on camera. But assume the bird does exactly what the parasite is built to make it do. It sees the pulsing striped lure. It darts in, and it plucks, not the whole snail, but the brood sac itself, tearing the swollen, caterpillar-shaped sac right off the eye stalk. And here is the detail that turns this from a tragedy into something colder. The snail does not have to die. Very often, the bird takes only the brood sac, leaving the rest of the snail behind, and the snail survives. It can live on for the better part of a year. Its eye stalk regrows. And here is the worst part. It can be infected all over again. The parasite has no need to kill it. Meanwhile, that torn away sac full of larvae is now exactly where it always wanted to be, inside the bird. There at last, the fluke matures into an adult, in the bird's gut, and it begins to lay eggs. Roughly 13 days later, those eggs pass out of the bird and its droppings, scattered across the leaves and the forest floor below. And down there, a snail is grazing. It finds the droppings. It eats, and the whole nightmare begins again, in a fresh pair of eyes. The parasite has closed a loop that runs from a snail's head into the sky, through a bird's body, and back down to the ground, using two completely different animals as unwitting couriers, and needing to kill neither one. And this is what makes it so hard to look away from. Step back and look at everything this soft, mindless worm accomplishes at once. It takes the eyes, climbing into the one part of the snail that reads the light, and packing them with beating striped sacs. It rewrites the behavior, not by seizing a brain it never even touches, but by quietly breaking the snail's instinct to hide, so it wanders into the open on its own. And it disguises the trap, shaping those stolen eyes into something a bird cannot resist. Most parasites you have heard of end in a death. This one does not need one. It does not gut its host. It does not drug it into a happy grave. It simply borrows the snail's eyes, turns them into a living advertisement, and, if the snail is lucky, hands the snail back, tentacles and all, to heal and be used again. A dead snail is a dead end. A living one can be harvested more than once. So the parasite keeps it alive, keeps it crawling, keeps it climbing into the light with two beating lures where its vision used to be. The snail is not being killed. It is being used. And it never knows the difference. It cannot. It gave up its eyes to the one thing that was going to spend them. If a parasite that turns a snail's own eyes into bait unsettled you, then you are not ready for what swims up next. Because this one does not borrow an organ. It replaces one. There is a creature that slips in through the gills of a living fish, crawls to the base of its tongue, and slowly severs it, cutting off the blood until the tongue withers and dies. And then it does the unthinkable. It latches onto the stump and becomes the tongue, a functioning living replacement that the fish will use to feed for the rest of its life, never knowing that the thing in its mouth is watching, eating, and very much alive. It is the only parasite known to science that replaces an entire organ of its host. Watch that video next. Subscribe, because every week we open another lid you cannot close again. Host or hijacker. No one is safe.